We're going to get started in just a minute or so. People are coming from all different kind of budget hearings, budget decision meetings right now. All right, we're gonna get started. Welcome everybody to the Capital Budget Subcommittee. We're meeting today for the purpose of capital budget decisions on PAYGO. For those interested who are watching, this does not include those legislative bond initiatives. That is a different day. This is just on the basically the cash part of the capital budget that goes with the operating budget. So let us begin. It's always good to see Vice Chair McCray and all of his help and the entire subcommittee as well. So with that, why don't we get started?
Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Beginning on page 1, the Department of Planning, DLS recommended concurring with the governor's allowance and the agency concurred and the House adopted. However, there is a color page for your consideration. This is page 1 of the yellow packet. So this item is committee narrative regarding the Maryland Historic Revitalization Tax Credit Program. This is a large program that many folks are interested in, and they still are using paper application forms to physically mail in, which obviously causes a lot of efficiency issues. So this narrative asks the agency to look into that, work with Do It, try to develop an online portal, and then get back to us on those efforts by December.
Mr. Chair, I move to reject item number 1 and adopt color page number 1.
Okay. Any opposition? All right. Thank you. Next.
On page 2, you'll find the military department. DLS recommended deleting 10 million in federal funds for the Havre de Grace CSMS project. The agency disagreed and the first house rejected.
Senator Jennings, do you have a motion on this? Move to, I think you want to concur with the House? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
I don't see any opposition. Okay. Next.
Starting on page 3, from the Department of Veterans Affairs, DLS recommended concurring with the governor's allowance. The agency concurred and the House adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 3.
Second.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay. Next.
The Department of General Services on page 4. On page 4 is the Department of General Services. What this language does is it identifies the specific projects that are getting the $52.5 million in general funds. First house adopted.
Mr. House, I move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 4.
Second.
Any opposition? Okay.
On page 5, this does the same except with the special funds. Also adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move to concur with the House, item number 2, page 5.
Second.
Any opposition? All right.
All right, on page 6, the Department of Natural Resources, DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. The agency concurred, the first house adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 6.
Second.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay. Adopted.
Page 7, Department of Agriculture, DLS recommend concurring with the governor's allowance. The agency concurred, the first house adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 7.
Second.
Any opposition? All right.
On page 8, this is the Interagency Commission on School Construction. The DLS recommend concurring with the governor's allowance. The agency concurred and the House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 8.
Second.
Any opposition?
Item number 1 on page 9 for the Maryland Higher Education Commission. The recommendation was to concur. The agency concurred and the House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 9.
Second.
Okay. Any opposition? All right.
On page 10, we have University of Maryland Eastern Shore. DLS recommended concurring with the governor's allowance. The agency concurred and the House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 10.
Second.
Any opposition? Okay. Adopted.
On page 11 for University System Maryland office, the recommendation was concur, the agency concurred, and the House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 11.
Second.
Any opposition? All right. Adopted.
Item number 1 on page 12 for Baltimore City Community College. A recommendation was to concur. The agency concurred and the House adopted.
Mr. Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 12.
Second.
Any opposition?
On page 13. On page 13, the Department of Housing and Community Development.
We'll get there. There we go.
Okay, on page 13 in the Department of Housing and Community Development, DLS recommended narrative requesting that DHCD and DBM estimate anticipated federal funds and include those estimates in the capital improvement program. The agency concurred and the House adopted.
Chair, move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 13.
Second.
Any opposition? All right.
And on page 14, the House took an additional action. They added language restricting funding in the Strategic Demolition Fund for 2 projects as shown.
Mr. Chair, I move to concur with the House on item number 1, page 14.
Second.
Any opposition? Okay.
On
And
page
if-
15.
Oh, if you turn to the color page packet, page 2. This is language that would restrict funding in the Baltimore Regional Neighborhood Initiative for a project.
Mr. Chair, I move to reject item number 1 on page 15 and adopt color page number 3.
Mr. Chairman,
Something.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chair, I think we're right now we're on color page 2, and I think your thought was to
Oh.
adopt.
Mr. Chair, I move to reject item number 1, page 15 and adopt color page number 2.
Second.
No, we haven't
I
quite gotten
think-
to page
I think-
15 of
I
the
think-
document. Yeah, we're
so-
still on
so-
the Department of Housing. and
So I know we've
Community
had a lot of moving pieces today, and so I think the posture is committee, just so we're all on the same page. So on page 14, item 1, we're concurring with the House, and that
Correct.
was already moved.
Got
And
that.
then we're now on color page 2, and the Vice Chair appropriately moved to adopt that. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any opposition? Okay, please.
Then also page 3 of the color page packet, this also relates to the Department of Housing and Community Development. This would restrict funding in the National Capital Strategic Economic Development Fund for a specific project.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt color page number 3.
Second.
Any opposition? All right.
In the main decision document, recommendation number, on page 15, recommendation for the Department of the Environment to concur with the governor's allowance. The agency concurred and the first House adopted. However, there is a color page on color page packet 4, right back there. So be federal emerging contaminants funding allocation and awarded report.
Mr. Chair, I move to reject item number 1, page 15, and adopt color page number 4.
Second.
Any opposition? All right. Is that it? Is there a motion to move, adopt the subcommittee report?
Second.
Any opposition? All right. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. We're done. That concludes today's voting session.